Mr Eastwood.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. This has been a fairly lengthy debate around this bill. I think a lot of people, particularly in the media, were looking forward to this particular section. I had the opportunity yesterday to speak at the beginning of the bill, and you allowed me some latitude. Maybe I took some more than I should have taken. But what I said at that point was that this is not a flags bill, and it shouldn't become a flags bill. I don't believe it will become a flags bill, but it's unfortunate and it's pretty predictable, really, that the story tonight will be about this particular debate. And I just would implore people to think about that when they're making their contributions. These amendments will not be passed today, thankfully. There's good reason for that, because we've just went through in fine detail, and the committee has gone through in a lot of detail over the last number of weeks and months, a very important piece of legislation that will change the way we do local government business for the next generation. That's what the focus should be on. I think we've done a good piece of work here in the last couple of days. Gladly, yeah.
Thank the member for giving way. Would the member not agree that failure to address this particular issue means that local government getting on with the business of delivering public services risks being severely hampered and handicapped by this hanging over its neck?
Well, you see, that's all very well, and we have to understand there is an issue. Of course there's an issue around flags. There was a process that we were all engaged in around dealing with the past, around flags and around parades. The Alliance Party's sort of lukewarm reaction to the Haas proposals doesn't leave us in a very good place either. And I think the Alliance Party need to understand, and it might be because they don't have very many representatives too far from here, that this is an issue that isn't an issue right across Northern Ireland. And I can tell you, although some people obviously have deep concern about their national flag, and I think we all, people who are nationally minded, have concern and fond feelings for their national flag, but it's how we deal with it. And I can tell you what people in my city were saying during the trouble that erupted around here, at your office and across the whole city of Belfast, when the whole world was looking at us and saying, I thought they had that whole thing sorted out. What's going on in Belfast? What does that do for our economy? And I can tell you what people in Derry were saying. They were saying, don't be importing that problem over here, because we don't need it. We were engaged. Oh, well, yeah.
I'll make the member clear. The Alliance Party is in no way lukewarm on the Haas proposals. The Alliance Party worked tirelessly and hard, not least for the victims and survivors in Northern Ireland, to come up with a set of proposals that have a realistic opportunity to improve access to justice, information and services for victims and survivors across Northern Ireland, and to deal with parading and flags. In terms of this not being an issue for Northern Ireland, I think you need to get your head out of the sand then. And in terms of it being a Belfast problem, well, it was Sinn Féin and the SDLP who put the proposal forward at Belfast. So if they think that there's a need for change and compromise at Belfast, then there's a need for change and compromise across the whole region.
Thank the member for his contribution. And of course, the Alliance Party had nothing to do with that particular decision in Belfast. But I think people do need to understand this. People right across Northern Ireland were looking at the trouble that erupted here and wringing their hands and going, what and under God have we gotten ourselves into this time? Why is there such a reaction? And maybe some of us need to understand that people do have a particular reaction. Go ahead, yeah.
For giving way, and as one of two people in this chamber who actually was in this City Hall the night the vote was taken, the member's quite right. The Alliance Party played a very pivotal role. In fact, they were the people who brought forward the suggestion that the flag be removed at all. And let's be clear, two men, the wee lad, complained about the flag flying Belfast City Hall. And the truth of the matter is, it's unfortunate that in this particular scenario, when a majority will work in the City Hall, when the Alliance, Sinn Féin and the SDLP come together, in this place today, when we're discussing this very issue about the flying of our national flag, Sinn Féin and the SDLP reject that majority and put down a petition of concern. That's appalling, and it is a complete denial of democracy.
Well, we could talk about democracy all night, and the DUP never put down petitions of concern on issues like this, ever. It would be a real shock if that happened in here. It would be a real shock. Okay, Mr. Speaker. But I will, yeah.
Not a democratic decision in relation to Belfast City Hall that actually took the Union flag down, which the members opposite failed to recognise, and was it not also a huge role of the 40,000 leaflets which were distributed by the DUP and the Ulster Unionist Party that had a huge impact on drawing and bringing people out onto the streets?
The member is correct. It was a democratic decision, and unfortunately, there was agitating and there was stirring of tensions outside of Belfast City Hall. People's offices who are elected, talk about democracy, there are people in this House who were elected to this House whose offices were attacked because of a lot of that stirring up of tension that went on around East Belfast and in other places. And that's not recognising democracy. We have to understand in Northern Ireland we have two competing identities. Unionist identity is not the only identity in Ireland. Our identity counts as well. And I think it's important that people understand that. I have no desire to strip councils of unionist emblems or symbols. Go into guilt. I'll take any of the members across the chamber to the Guildhall in Derry, and I'll give you a tour. Well, you call it Londonderry. That's fine. I have no problem. I have no problem. Oh well, so that wasn't a democratic decision either. I'll take any of you to Derry. See, sometimes people don't want to listen, Mr. Speaker, because they don't like what they're hearing. But sometimes they're just going to have to listen, because I was elected to this House in the same way that they were, by a democratic decision. And I would love to take, we'll maybe do a bus run, a group of the DUP MLAs down to Derry, and we'll do a tour. Or you can go to Londonderry as well. We'll put two signs on the bus. We'll do a tour. Maybe Mr. Campbell could take the tour as well. We'll do a tour of the Guildhall, and we'll look at all the symbols of British identity and of historic imperialism in our city that we haven't stripped away, because I think it's important. I think it's important that we recognise our history, because we have a shared history. We don't like all of it, but we have a shared history. I'm not proposing that we tear down the walls of Derry because they're a symbol of British imperialism. I'm not proposing that at all. What we have done in our city.
Order. There is no time limits on members who want to make a contribution in this debate. If they want to make a contribution, they should get their name in the speaking list. And I would also say to the member who's on his feet, let us try and get back to the amendment. Let us not have a debate, whether it be the Guildhall or anywhere else. Let's get back to the amendment. That's before us.
The point that I was trying to make, Mr. Speaker, was there's no desire from the SDLP to strip away Britishness or the symbols of British imperialism even. Because we recognise that we have a history in this part of the world. But what we have to understand, and I think what the DUP have to understand, that we also have a future, and it needs to be a shared future. Yes?
Would you not agree that for decades, in many councils across the state, that if you looked at the emblems, that you would be forgiven for believing that there was only one community here, and what you're trying to do now is address that problem?
Well, I think that's a fair point, because a lot of nationalists right across the north have a very different opinion and experience of councils than have been explained from across the benches today. So we need to stop. What are we here debating flags for? Ms Cameron made a very good point. I thought she made a very eloquent and thoughtful speech when she said that the issue of flags, referring to the Alliance Party amendment, shouldn't be sneaked in by the back door to this bill, because this bill was much more important to that. Unfortunately, she then went on to say that she was supporting two of the other amendments on flags. Did you say you want to go?
Thank the member for giving way. Mrs Cameron also said that we should deal with this issue here in the Assembly. I find it hard to describe what is happening today in full public view in the regional legislature as sneaking something in via the back door. The hope is to have a mature, sensitive debate, as was initiated by my colleague Anna Lowe, and I hope that we get back to that.
Yeah, well, the place, for dealing with this issue is politically was the Haas process. We need to get another process on the cards as soon as possible, because we're all going into an election. I know the DUP, everybody has to get up today and speak about flags and wave the flag and punch the table and everything else. But after this election, we're going to have to get back to it, because people out there are fed up listening to us talking about flags and parades and the past, and they're all very, very important. But to see until we deal with it, we're going to be bound and imprisoned to constantly talk about them and debate them in here and across councils and everywhere else. So I would ask everybody, every single political party in this assembly, to get together. I'd love you to do it today and tomorrow, but it's not going to happen until after this election. We can tell that already. But as soon as possible, to get the two governments around the table to pull us together to finally and once and for all deal with it. Because my generation, Mr. Speaker, will not forgive us if we don't deal with this as a matter of urgency. So, yeah, well, yeah.
In terms of getting round the table and dealing with this as a matter of urgency, could the member clarify then why his party joined with Sinn Féin and boycotted the Assembly Commission when they tried to deal with this issue?
Here we go again. No attempt. It has been universally recognised right across the world, and it was recognised last week in America, that the only way to deal with these issues is to deal with them comprehensively and properly in a negotiating setting. And I do think we made quite a lot of progress around Haas, and all parties played their part in that. But we need to get back to it, because we can't just leave it up in the air, because the people won't forgive us. I believe very strongly that the tricolour is my national flag, and I have no problem with you believing otherwise. I don't have any problem with you believing that the Union Jack is your national flag. My national identity is not decided by you or by anybody else.
Order.
Mr. Speaker. But well, yeah.
I think the member he touches on an important point here. We're conflating identity with a reflection of constitutional status. The Good Friday Agreement absolutely enshrines the member's right to be Irish, to be of Irish nationality, but the constitutional status of Northern Ireland is part of the UK. And would the member agree then, in reflecting that constitutional status, that requires a reflection of the Union flag, and in the way that we're proposing, which is a sensitive, balanced way that reflects the diversity of Northern Ireland?
The Alliance Party's argument around this, in terms of extending the Union Jack right across all the councils, and more flags rather than less flags, and I can't quite understand the logic of that when they talk about good relations earlier on. But we have to recognise each other's identity, and I have no problem recognising unionism's identity. Happy to help you celebrate it and everything else, but you have to understand that I have a different identity, and people over here have a different identity, and it's not out to threaten your identity, and I don't think your identity threatens my identity, but I'm comfortable enough to say that I'm Irish, that the Irish tricolour is my national flag, and it is sort of surprising. It is surprising. Well, again, you don't want to listen. It is surprising that when you get two nationalist parties actually voting to fly the Union Jack in Belfast City Council, once again, unionism snatches defeat from the jaws of victory and creates. Go ahead.
For giving way, and you see that's exactly the core of the issue, because in Belfast City Council, the views of the unionist community were completely ignored, and the decision, yes, they were, and the fact of the matter is that the decision taken by SDLP, Alliance and Sinn Féin to remove that flag, a flag that flew there and caused little or no offence. There were 6 objections over the years it flew, 6 objections. And the truth of the matter is, from this side of the House, there was no objection to anybody celebrating their culture. But when your two parties, in terms of my culture as an Orangeman, and I'm proud to be an Orangeman, when my culture is denigrated and demeaned and attacked by the two parties sitting across the way, who actively go out and protest against parades and campaign against parades, that's something which you really can lecture us about. But when it comes to reality, you do not deliver.
I come from a city that last August had, I think, the largest apprentice boys, the largest march, the Loyal Orders March, I stand to be corrected around that, I'm not an expert, right across Northern Ireland. We had that marching through Derry City without any trouble. and which is a largely nationalist city. But of course, we're very much against your identity, and we run it down and everything else. The very next day, we had the largest ever festival of Irishness in the same city, in the same street. But we were able to accommodate that. I think I think there's a lot can be learned from the way Derry has behaved over the last year and beyond. And people also need to understand that outside of council buildings and everything else, I have to witness in my own city around the anniversary of 14 people being murdered on the streets, the paratrooper flag being flown on the entrance to the city. Now, why don't all of us as public representatives get together and recognise that that is in itself determined to try and offend people? That was the meaning behind erecting that flag, to try and offend people. Now, surely we can be a bit more grown up than that and try and move things forward in that regard. I will finish there, Mr. Speaker. I know you're glad to hear that, but we'll have plenty of time to listen to probably all of you throughout the rest of the debate. I hope, Mr. Speaker, when this is reported tonight, that the media recognise and the public recognise that we have done some good work in this Assembly over the last couple of days, because we're often criticised for not doing a lot of good work. We have done some good work. We've passed a very important, or we will have passed a very important piece of legislation that will change the way we do local government throughout the next number of years, and I think we should be proud of that. And hopefully, when this is all over and everybody gets it off their chest and they get to release a bit of anger and everything else, we can get back to doing what we should be doing in this House and dealing with the economic crisis that has gone on right across the north. Thank you very much.
Tom Elliott. Mr. Elliott.